The president is ramping up his attacks on impeachment and is most likely trying to change the conversation by saying things like this today. All Republicans must remember what they are witnessing here, a lynching. Many quickly condemned the president's remarks. Some Democratic lawmakers pointed out the president is trying to distract the country.
It is very painful, and it is a distraction that America should not accept or tolerate. And frankly, we should proceed constitutionally as we are, as members of Congress, to do our job.
I think that what we see here, once again, is this president attempting to change the narrative, using what I consider to be real caustic terms in order to change the conversation, to compare the constitutional process to something like lynching is far beneath the office of the President of the United States.
The congressman from South Carolina. But as we showed you earlier, that somehow brings us to Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. The site, by the way, of 164 recorded lynchings of African Americans. Senator Graham knows the history and doubled down on the president's use of the word. Separately, the Daily Beast reports tonight that the president's allies are upset with Graham for not holding hearings in the Judiciary Committee looking into Joe Biden's son and Ukraine. With all of that in mind, we are happy to have with us tonight Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root. Jason, first off, I thought we'd start with a definition for our viewers. A lynching is mob rule. It is murder by mob without due process of law, without any process, often accompanied by torture. It is, in short, the worst thing humans can do to each other, the worst thing to imagine a family member of any of us going through. We should also mention it was my privilege in June to visit the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, in effect, our nation's lynching memorial. It is no less impactful than the Holocaust Museum, than Yad Vashem in Israel, than the 9/11 Museum. I wish it was a right of citizenship for all people to visit the memorial. Having established that, Jason, your take on the invocation of this powerful word in our national discourse today.
Well, first, Brian, the reason that this can happen so glibly on the part of this president is the lack of history that most Americans understand. Lynching is still seen as this terrible thing that occasionally the Klan did. People don't realize things that happened in Camilla, Georgia, or Lawrence, South Carolina, or all throughout Arkansas, or what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, until they watch Watchmen on Sunday. Most Americans don't realize that acts of terror on the part of white Democrats, white citizens, police officers in the Army were standard in this country for over a century after the end of the Civil War. If there was even the slightest inkling of understanding on the part of the average American about how pervasive lynching was, how violent it was, the women who were raped and then lynched, the children who were lynched, the men whose body parts were cut and stuffed in their mouths and then lynched, you would never have any president, even one who has the sort of racial mindset that Donald Trump has, would ever get away with being able to use that terminology. So it's not just a reflection of how bad and how racist a lot of Donald Trump's language is, Brian. It's a reflection of how many Americans do not understand how serious and how bloody our history is, so they can act shocked that someone does something like this as opposed to immediately condemning it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.